today we're going to be focusing on 3 ways to manage required trainings in half the time, which hopefully you all are very excited about. I know I sure am, because boy, can required training take a lot of time. So with that said, let's kick it over to the next slide and start our first pulse check question. I'm going to throw this out to the group. Yeah, there we go. Ooh, maybe the slides, Amanda, could you go one slide forward? I think maybe we reordered them. Apologies, all technical difficulties. Okay, actually sorry, Amanda, could you go back one? I think there we go. Okay, so scale of 1 to 5, 5 being, I super agree with this statement, 1 being not at all. Compliance training is what keeps you motivated to come to work every day. You could just tell me in the comments section, is this the thing that gets you pumped about HR? This is why you joined the HR community, because you want to do compliance trainings. It's okay to be honest. I'll give everyone a second or two. Oh, got a neutral response, just a smiley face. Anybody else? Scale of 1 to 5. Okay, we got a 2. Yep. Okay. Anybody else? Oh, we got a 5. I like the variation here. Luce, if you could unmute yourself, tell us a little bit about why this is a 2 for you. How could you possibly say that compliance training isn't the thing that gets you most jazzed about HR?
I have more employee complaints to address than the compliance program or course.
Oh no. Okay, we hear you there. Tell us a little bit more about that. What complaints are coming in?
Oh, I'm in the learning and development department, and I would see most of the questions being raised to me is really more on how to shorten this course, how to make this scalable, or how to address this employee performance with learning. And I think the compliance courses for me for now are things that I do quarterly. So just for me to make sure that I am not missing any deadlines.
Yeah, I'm hearing a couple of things there. It's sort of like the ease of use and the employee experience side of things. Like, how do I access this? How do we make it more scalable? I'm also hearing like a little bit, I don't know if you meant this implicitly or explicitly, but it almost, I can imagine, is distracting from some of the other learning and development priorities that you probably have on your end. Let's call on somebody who gave a 1. Wow, Michelle, lowest score. I'm right there with you. Michelle, if you could unmute yourself and tell us a little bit more about why this is a 1 for you.
Sorry, I'm trying to find unmute. I own my own private practice and I am a physician, so I don't do any HR stuff. This is like, I mean, I'm having to do it because I have to, but not because that's what drives me. So I'm a clinician. This is not my jam.
And here's the thing, Michelle, thank you for being so honest. I think most people are in your boat, right? Compliance sort of gets thrown at you. And it's not, for the record, that we don't care about or value the stuff that we're learning in compliance training, right? It's very important, valuable stuff. Harassment prevention, cybersecurity, code of conduct, DEI. These are all very important things. And also, it may not be the thing that you necessarily came to join the company for, right? It may be something that was thrown at you. It may not be the focal point of your initiative, right? Maybe you have a bunch of DEI initiatives, but your focal point is not harassment prevention or this particular compliance training, right? You're trying to tackle that goal in different ways. And that's a real genuine challenge that many people in your position are facing. So thank you all for being so honest. Let's go ahead to the next slide and talk about how we're going to try and help mitigate some of these challenges that you all are facing over the course of this webinar. One, we're going to talk about how to build a seamless employee experience. We know this is so critical, not only because we care about our employee experience and we want to make sure we look good to them, okay, but also because we don't want to distract them. They have so many other things that they are working on that we don't want them to lose time trying to figure out how to log into the system, which training they have to take, are they compliant or not already, right? We also don't want them to lose buy-in in us as a team. Everyone knows that if they hate one of our initiatives, right, they might be less likely to buy into our next initiative, right? This compliance training was a mess. It was a disaster. What makes you think I'm now going to sign up for your management training next quarter, right? Second one is minimal admin work. You will have plenty of responsibilities on your plate. This might not even be your area of expertise. And so we want to make this as simple as possible for you, as easy and low lift as possible for you, so you can focus on other areas of the business. And then finally, manager partnership, because we know that managers are really the culture advocates at the company. They set the culture. They really do. They are the closest connection with every employee across the company. And so the more that you can leverage them, the more you can partner with them, the more you can build a relationship with them, the better. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about how Athena as a product is going to help you do all three of these things: create a seamless employee experience, drive the lowest lift admin experience, and then build that manager partnership. So with that said, let's go into our next slide, which is just one more pulse check question before I promise we're going to go into showing you some of that magic. So yes or no, this is even easier than a 1 to 5 scale. Just a yes or no in the comments section. Who here has ever had an employee complain about having to take a compliance training? And we already have a couple of yeses from the last round. Yes, Michelle. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. Other Michelle. Yes. From am I pronouncing that right? Pia. Pia, why don't you unmute yourself? Tell me a little bit more about some of the employee complaints that you have received from your teams.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. That people don't have enough time, that we have too much learning. They, have too many day-to-day responsibilities. So it's really competing priorities. And things constantly change. So, there's always a requirement or a new course that we have to add. So I hear it quite often.
Yeah, it's confusing, it's time consuming. And also I'd love to explore, what is the ripple effect, Pia? What does the executive team think? What goes through their mind when they hear a bunch of employees complaining that time is being taken away from their work to take this compliance training?
It's a mix, because some of the executives, they own the courses or they own the risk. So they're a champion for that training. But, if it affects the business side where they're revenue generating, they are very much more pro to sharing their feedback that it's, at a risk of being able to generate revenue. If it's impacting salespeople, their priority should be making sales. So it's a mixed bag of trying to be innovative where we can provide the training at a shorter duration, and try to experiment in other ways of delivering the information to learners without taking up too much of their time.
Yep, I hear that a lot. The revenue generating stuff is just constant. And I definitely, I can just imagine some of the faces that are happening on the other side of the screen here. Let's call on just one more person before we kick it off. Nicola, if you could unmute yourself, because you gave a yes with an exclamation point. Anytime there's a lot of enthusiasm, I like to give people a chance to weigh in. What kind of complaints do you hear from your employees when it comes to compliance training?
I think it's exactly the same. It's the time to do it. And you kind of, some of them who are managers have to do extra parts to it because they're obviously learning more things and their time is limited too. But I think what helps me is that my senior leadership team does champion it a lot. My CEO champions it a lot, which really helps. But ultimately, you always have those stragglers who you're chasing at the end, and you're chasing and you're chasing, and they still don't do it. But I think that's the hardest thing when you're just getting the pushback.
Yep, you're touching on a couple of really key things here. We're going to talk a little bit more about chasing people down later on as well. But I think you're hinting at something really important here, which is, yes, it's the time commitment, but it's also you have to chase me down because I don't even know what training to take. I don't know where to log in to take this training. I don't know, like, I thought I already did the training. Didn't I just do it? Why are you assigning me another training? So all these things really start to bubble up to really sour an employee experience. So with that said, I'm going to kick it over to one of my fabulous co-hosts here to walk us through how we can improve that employee experience and how Athena is trying to help and is helping with that solution.
Thanks, Melanie. So I'll start with a very quick intro. So hi, I'm Philip. I'm the Director of Product here at Athena. I joined 2 years ago as the first product person here, and I've since grown and scaled our product management teams. So very excited to be here today to share a few examples of what we've seen over the last 2 years as we've built out our suite of time-saving tools for admins around required trainings. And a minute, yes, thank you, perfect. So I wanted to start by introducing the learning-facing portion of our platform. So we host all of our training on proprietary software, which gives us complete control over the look and feel and the learning experience of each of our courses. So as we built this, we started with a modern UI that sets very clear expectations with learners. So every assignment is broken down into digestible topics that are between like 3 and 7 minutes or so in length. And this allows us to give learners a very clear expectation of how many topics they will need to cover in each assignment, including the total time that they'll need to spend training. If at any point they leave and come back, we'll pick up exactly where they left off, making it very easy for them to train at their own pace. And then in the case of multiple assignments, you can see in this example here, maybe you have a training on both harassment prevention and a survey around DEI. The admin is able to set a configurable deadline on each one to emphasize urgency to learners in terms of which assignment to train on first. We also make it really easy to notify learners when they have a new assignment or when they have an assignment for which a deadline is coming up. So we'll integrate directly via both Slack and also email through something that we call a magic link system. So through this system, learners can access their training via a single unique link. And we can also further add security here via SSO, if you'd so like. And then reminders will emphasize the most urgent trainings first, and will deep link learners directly where they left off within each assignment. And then lastly, we focus very heavily on having fresh and engaging content. So we have an in-house content team that produces each of our courses. We update them on an ongoing basis. And then in every course, we include scenarios at the end of each topic that are really designed to mirror exactly what teams face in real world scenarios. So like what we're going for there is both realism, a little bit of a challenge, and something that, that will be interesting to learners. The content itself leverages a variety of mediums and formats. So this includes things like videos, comics, audio, regardless of what device you're on or what content medium you're viewing. We optimize that experience for each of those different devices. And for us, good training is a lot more than just a nice to have. So we find that when learners actually like their training, they are much more likely to complete it, and thus actually learn from it. So we consistently see around a 93% positivity rating across our courses, with over 3/4 of learners completing their training on time. These are both well above what we see in terms of industry benchmarks. And then I'm going to kick it over to Tess to kind of expand on that a bit more and share some examples.
Hey everyone, Tess Manning here, head of sales at Athena. I also joined about 2 years ago and was estimating how many companies I've spoken to over the last 2 years about compliance training. I think it's around 1,000, which is potentially mind-blowing. And I can assure all of you, I mean, even in those brief spotlights that Melanie called you up for, that the pain points that you're all going through with getting training assigned, getting it updated, completed, dealing with complaints, like you're not alone. I know often you might be the only person in your company owning this program, and so you're definitely speaking to a group of individuals who understand what you're going through. And so Philip talked a lot about the employee experience, right? And at Athena or any vendor that you're looking at, thinking about the employee experience as the base of quality for training is really important, because otherwise, obviously people aren't going to do it. They're going to be confused. And high completion really matters, like for the obvious reasons, right? You need to make sure that mandatory training like harassment prevention is completed in a timely manner in order to meet state or global regulations. But in addition to that, the people teams that I speak to every day, they're looking for a training that actually resonates with employees. Philip talked a bit about having scenarios where employees can see themselves in the scenarios. So that means seeing a diverse group of individuals in the situations, seeing scenarios that reflect global, hybrid, or remote first teams, weird things that might happen on a Slack or a Zoom meeting versus an office interaction. Having training that really resonates with your employees is really important to teams we talk to, because they want employees to actually understand what ethical behavior looks like in their day-to-day work. And then, of course, I'm sure you have a slew of policies, of handbooks that you want employees to look at. They might check them out when they first join and then never look at them again. And so our approach to making sure employees keep policies top of mind is actually by weaving parts of policies throughout your compliance training so that they can actually put those policies into context, right? And remember, oh, okay, I heard someone say something really uncomfortable on this Zoom call. I know that that's actually against our code of conduct, and I'm going to speak up about it, right? And so ultimately having a training that resonates is going to empower your employees to actually act and ultimately protect your company. And then the second piece around why completion matters is that the training that you select actually signals what leadership and what your people and legal teams, how much they care about culture. So I hear a lot from people teams too, that they have a high bar for learning and development quality in management training and sales training and product training. But for some reason, compliance training is this like sad, left behind group of modules that, I don't know, maybe it's delivered through your PEO, maybe it's in your LMS, the experience is confusing like we talked about. So, I mean, just imagine like if that's how you're delivering the training, what are employees going to think about it? Are they going to take it seriously? Do they think they should actually pay attention to it, right? And Melanie mentioned this before. I think the reality is like anything that you're selecting is obviously a reflection of, people and legal teams too. And so I hear a lot from people leaders who are like, this training's so embarrassing. Like, I don't even want to give it to my employees. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? But that unfortunately is the state of affairs within a lot of organizations. And so thinking about employee experience is super important because it signals, does this content matter? Does doing the training matter? And it does, right? And then this last point here, I mean, having high completion organically, which we'll talk more about, is going to save you all tons of time. Like from what we hear continuously, like hours, weekly, monthly, annually, quarterly. And so we have a lot of automations in Athena, for example, that will give you back a ton of time because you'll naturally have really high completion rates. Employees will like the training, they'll do it, they'll want to do it. And so it's less chasing that you have to do. Cool. On to an example of one of our customers. So we have a customer called All Day Kitchens that's in the restaurant tech business. They have around 500 employees that are distributed. A lot of employees in Chicago too, is where their headquarters is. They came to us because their prior training provider had a really outdated user experience, learner experience, all the things we were talking about. People were like pretty confused about how to log in. They received a lot of complaints from employees that the actual learner experience wasn't accessible to different types of learners and learning styles. And so it was difficult for some employees to actually complete the training because they needed an audio option or they needed colors that were accessible. So that was a challenge for them. And then it wasn't mobile friendly. Like it's pretty clear today that people are multitasking. They want to listen to a training while they're going on a walk. I know I do that with our training often. And so giving employees the ability to be flexible with how they're completing training is really important to them. So they came over to Athena and have been able to move their onboarding training time from 30 days to just 7 days. And within that 7 days, they're getting 96% completion rate with their onboarding cohorts, which is pretty wild. This is for harassment prevention training specifically. So that's really taken a ton of time off of admin time, but also has, indicated that the learners are having a great experience. They know how to do their training. They're enjoying it. And so we do see a 91% positivity rating from their learners for this course, which is pretty shocking for a compliance training. And they are super, super happy with the difference there. And they're seeing an NPS score of around 80%.
Thank you, Tess. And I'll actually jump in before we do the next pulse check question and say that the audio portion has been such a game changer for me. I don't know if you all with your current providers have this, but it's essentially like listening to a podcast. You just get to go for a walk and do your training at the same time, which is such a time saver for employees as well, right? Like taking a lunch break, going for a walk, clearing my mind, whatever. Oh, and let me go and listen to this while I do, as opposed to I have to sit at my desk and feel like I'm losing time. It just feels a little bit different. You can do the dishes, you can, do what you need to do and still take your training. And I'll say on the admin side, it's just such a relief not to have to answer, a very basic question like, where is the link? How do I log in? Right? If it's just seamlessly integrated, if there's just like a Slack notification that, you click on the Slack or there's SSO integration, all I have to do is click there. I don't need to remember my new username or password. It makes such a difference. I'm sure everyone on this call can relate to having to stop what you're doing to pull up that person's account, find their link, help them with their username, resend the instructions. These little differences make such a high impact and such a big difference in terms of saving time, especially when you magnify it, the larger your company gets and the more employee questions you have to filter through. So thank you very much, Philip and Tess. Okay, let's do our next pulse check question, which is scale of 1 to 5. How much do you agree with this sentence? 5 being I super agree, 1 being not at all. I never lose time with tedious manual work surrounding compliance training, such as having to run an Excel report, having to chase down employees, manually assigning a training by location or employee type. Are you a manager? Are you based in Chicago? Are you based in the UK? 1 to 5, who agrees with this sentence? 5, I never lose time. 1, oh my gosh, I spend so much time on such tedious work. Yep. Okay, we're getting a 1. Anybody? Yep, getting a couple of 1s here. Okay. So Nicola, if you could unmute yourself, tell us a little bit more about some of the things you lose time on when it comes to compliance training.
I think this is the biggest pain point. It's having to pull those manual reports and then decipher what's going on, who to chase up, and then doing that manual chaser. We also have employees based in lots of different locations. So again, it's having to make sure you're assigning the right trainings to the right people, very manual, very kind of person by person. So it's just literally that kind of like you're spending so much time looking at individuals, which, when you have a big company, I mean, ours is only 160 people, but if you have more people, I can imagine that that's even worse. But I think for me, it's just tedious work, which I don't want to be involved in.
It's so tedious. And I'm going to say not only is it a time suck, it's also an energy suck. By the time, right? Like by the time you're done with this, you're just like, I don't want to do anything else.
I'm over it.
Right? I'm over it. I'm over it. 100%. Well, good news for you that, Athena's got a solution that can help take away all that manual work. I'm going to pass the mic back over to my lovely co-hosts.
All right, thanks, Melanie. Full disclosure, I did not come up with the coursing river analogy here, but I do truly believe that we have some pretty powerful automation tools to help with admin workflows. So here is a view of our admin dashboard. This is basically our admin's home for setting up and managing assignments, viewing reporting information, and following up with learners. We recently redesigned this platform. We just launched this new version in Q3 of last year. And as you might imagine, as we made updates, there were lots of directions that we could have gone. We made a very conscious decision to put admin time at the forefront of our research and our design here. So on the left here, you can see a sample reporting page. On this page, you have a list of every learner who was enrolled in the assignment with very glanceable stats that show both the percentage of learners who have completed it, as well as the ability to follow up with learners who have not completed the assignment with a single click. You can also automate this outreach on a weekly or biweekly basis to further reinforce those deadlines. And then setting up an assignment is also a breeze. So our assignment setup includes powerful configurability, such as how and when to enroll new learners, how and when to notify them. And you can even automatically keep training top of mind by opting into short trainings that we'll send throughout the year. You can also assign one-time trainings whenever you like and segment this to specific audiences. So a powerful example of this, say that you have a sales department, they keep falling for phishing attacks. You can schedule a training on phishing to go directly to your sales team to remind them of best practices. And then to even further save our admins time, we recently launched something that we call our assignment activity report. So this is a configurable report that you can send straight to your inbox on a recurring basis, so weekly or monthly. You can see completion stats and learner engagement stats at a glance for each of your assignments without any need to log into the platform. So if you notice an area where you do want to dig in more or follow up on, you can click back into the dashboard and dig in further. But we know that certain times of year are more critical than others. So for example, let's say that July is your big compliance push month. You can crank up the cadence on these automatic reports as you monitor your team's progress towards completing trainings.
All right, back with another exciting customer success story. So we had Robinhood join Athena as a customer about 2 years ago. They had a pretty decentralized compliance training program with different stakeholders owning different courses. So people team had harassment prevention, their regulatory compliance team had anti-bribery and corruption. I know that somebody earlier mentioned that leadership often really cares about their specific content vertical, and they really care about making sure completion's done and also receiving reporting on that. But oftentimes the actual execution of that falls to you, right? To all of the folks that are on the call today. So it's been exciting to see Robinhood centralize all of their training in Athena's platform. And then all of the kind of disparate work that gets done across assignments to the right people, like Philip was talking about, reminders, reporting, all of that is in one place and automated as much as possible for you. So Robinhood, prior to joining Athena, was spending during their quarterly compliance pushes about an hour or so on enrollment. But today they spend 0 minutes on enrollment because we do have an HRIS integration set up for them. So we know when new employees are joining, we know to assign new hire training the next day. Year over year, we have an annual training date for the full company, depending on the deadlines they set. And if anyone moves states or is promoted or joins a new team, literally the next day, we'll send those people the differential in training that they need in order to stay compliant. So if someone moved from Texas to California, we'll give them just the California training that they're missing. So really knock down time for them on enrollment. And then reminders, this is a big one. I know that everyone's mentioned this today, hear this all the time. Even if you automate your reminders, which a platform like Athena can do for you, there's still work that goes into chasing like the last 5, 7 to 1%. Like it takes time, right, to get those last stragglers in. I think somebody said stragglers today. That's the word. So Robinhood previously was spending 21 hours a quarter, right? That's like hours weekly every quarter on sending out manual reminders. With the automated reminders Athena has, it's knocked down to 14 hours. And then our customer success team has actually partnered really strategically with their team to provide templates for communications to send on Slack, to send to different teams, to use on all hands, to get that final push across for people who are outstanding. And then another, teaser, we'll share as the next section. We do have a manager tool as well that can help you partner with managers to get training done too. So combination of all of those things have really helped them reduce time on that. The third area that they've saved a ton of time in is reporting. So their team, they have stakeholders, some analytics team, people, L&D, legal, working on compiling reporting for different folks in leadership. They used to spend 3 hours a week on this, and now it's only 10 minutes a week. So they use our kind of pre-built, really robust reporting. They can filter by department, by teams, and easily export beautiful visuals out to leadership around completion, kind of sliced and diced by key employee metrics. So all in all, I've been saving 45 hours per quarter by switching platforms. So something to think about when you're looking at a new training provider is, really realizing that the status quo, what you're doing today, it doesn't have to be that way, right? And so really pushing to figure out how much time are you going to save me in all of these areas that I'm spending like unnecessary time doing. I've got better things to do, strategic work to do. So today, their analytics lead has told us that with all the time back she's been working on really critical data infrastructure projects for them.
I think that's exactly right. Anytime you think about a compliance training platform or required trainings, you want to make sure that they're working for you, not against you, right? And I think that oftentimes, because it can feel like a low priority, because it sort of gets in the way of other things that you're trying to do, it can feel like, you know what, I'm not going to really think about how to make this work better for me. I just need to get it out of the way. But actually investing that time to be really strategic and thoughtful about like, okay, how do I pick the right provider? How do I make sure that it is automating things? It's making sure I don't have to pull out any reports. There are the integrations that I need. It's getting the employees the experience that they need. Once you put in that work up front to pick the right provider for you, it ends up ultimately, to Tessa's point, saving you so much time. So truly, definitely, these are important things to look out for anytime you're looking for a compliance training provider. Okay, Amanda, if you could kick it over to the next slide, our last pulse check question, I promise. Scale of 1 to 5. 5 being you agree with this statement, 1 being not at all. Employees pay just as much attention to HR and people communications as they do to their managers. So who here? Scale of 1 to 5, 5 being, yep, my employees are looking out for those HR emails. They can't wait. 1 being, oh my goodness, how do I make someone open a freaking email? Okay, got a 2 so far. I'm gonna give it another second in case anybody else wants to weigh in. All right, Pia, if you could unmute yourself, tell me a little bit more about why you think this. What do you mean HR emails aren't as exciting as manager emails?
Maybe it's the frequency, especially for me coming from the learning side, when they see something that's coming as a reminder or a notification of training. I don't think it's on their top priority. I don't think they're expecting it to be something new or something that they're not aware of. They're probably assuming it's something to do.
Yep, I think that's exactly right. There's a saying that someone used to say all the time, which is, your priority is not my priority. And so, right, just because you want me to open this email, HR, does not mean I'm about to drop what I'm doing to read this email. On the other hand, if they get a Slack message from their manager, or if their manager brings something up in a one-on-one, they are going to pay so much more attention, right? And that's okay, right? We want to leverage our managers that way. We want to empower our managers to have great, strong, dynamic relationships with their direct reports. And also, we want to leverage that, right? We want to make that work for us, right? So if we sort of accept the reality that, maybe they're not going to open my email from me as HR, how else can I get them to pay attention to this thing that I need them to do? So I'm going to kick it over to Philip to tell us a little bit more about how you can make that happen with your training provider.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melanie. So we're really excited about this. This is a brand new feature that we launched about 3 or 4 months ago. We've seen some really kind of exciting early results, so I'm excited to share it. And so this right here is our manager portal. This basically sits alongside the manager's learning center, so it makes it very easy for them to see a snapshot of their team's training progress. We've seen a lot of early success with enlisting managers. As we were just talking about, frontline managers have much smaller teams to worry about. Learners are more likely to action on a direct message from their manager versus an auto reminder from a vendor that they may or may not even remember, or like put 2 and 2 together of exactly what it is. So like all of that to say, I think this has been something that we've been very excited to see and to put into action. And so we also show admins the same information, but we basically aggregate it at a higher level. So for example, directly in the admin hub, an admin can view a breakdown of each team at the company and then corresponding completion rates. They can even zoom out further. So if they want to look at something like the departments of the company or different locations, they can use that to kind of suss out broader trends. And then as always, this is integrated with our reminder system. So with a few clicks, they can trigger reminders to frontline managers. And the system will then send a notification to all those managers who have learners with outstanding training so that those managers can follow up directly. And these reminders can be sent via email or Slack, and they're really just a great way to keep training top of mind for those frontline managers. So admins can set these up to go to their managers on a recurring basis. And once set up, managers can basically just open a quick email, see completion rates directly in their inbox without even needing to view the portal. They can click into the portal if they would like. And then it's very easy for them to follow up directly with their direct reports. And this is really kind of your pathway to getting that completion rate higher, which I know Tess is going to talk about in a second here.
Thanks, Philip. Yes, I can attest personally that it's very easy to just forward one of those roll-up emails and forward it to your entire team. And it creates a bit of a competitive atmosphere when people see that, Melanie's done her training, Philip has not, and Philip's like, oh God, I got to get mine done. So it's a really, really great way to loop managers into the compliance program, into really ethics and inclusion communications at a broader level. And we've been seeing this trend really like the last year. We've seen a lot of requests from companies asking for automated manager tools like this one, because they've realized like that ethics and inclusion is not just being modeled via tone from the top, which is a phrase I'm sure everyone's heard today, but really the rest of your leadership team, your managers, play a huge part in actually reinforcing why training matters, why this content matters, type of culture that your peers want to see, the type of behavior that people want to see at this company if they're going to stay here. Retention is really top of mind, and managers are a huge part of this. And more so than that, like managers play a big part in actually creating the tone around the fact that they're a safe space for employees to come to talk to about ethics and inclusion concerns. And so it's really, really key for them to, not just say that, but actually play a role in the whole program overall. And so if you go to the next slide, why it's been so challenging and why companies have been coming to us asking, how can we do this? Like everybody knows it's important. Everybody knows managers are effective partners for people operations, for HR, for legal, but it's just impossible. So we're just giving up on it. It's just too much time. This might sound familiar. Usually what I hear is that people teams are downloading completion CSVs, one for each course, merging those to figure out completion rates overall, doing VLOOKUP to figure out employees managers, sending out individual emails, CCing managers. That doesn't work, right? Like nobody has that kind of time. Like one of our customers, they were previously spending 10 plus hours a month doing that workflow. And then it wasn't even really working because it basically looks like as you're leading up to a deadline, managers are getting like 6, 7 individual emails a week, saying so-and-so's not in deadline. They're not paying attention. Learners are getting generic emails. Like the whole thing's a mess, right? And so that's why we've really been excited to build this type of automated feature that's giving managers just the basics, the tools they need all in one place. And we've definitely seen it move the needle. So Philip alluded to this, but we've gotten some early stats back on teams that have adopted our manager team insights tool. So for teams that have turned on the dashboard for managers and the emails, we've seen 89% completion within deadline. And for teams that have turned on weekly notifications for managers, so those are those roll-up emails that managers get, they've seen 97% completion, which is pretty mind-blowing when you think about all the time that's spent chasing people down, trying to build out these manual manager reports. All right. So we're going to wrap here shortly and leave some time for Q&A, because I know there's been a lot of good insights so far from the group, probably a lot of follow-up questions, lots to cover in an hour. But to wrap, kind of put a nice bow on everything we talked about today, really like our approach and hopefully what you're looking at when you're thinking about a training partner is thinking about, one, how can you give really engaging, relevant, easy to complete, personalized training to employees at your company, and really make it seamless for them to get their training done, but also learn from it, right? And to build the kind of behavior and reinforce the kind of behavior you want to see in your organization. Secondly, when it comes to actually managing the training, our goal is to help our customers cut the amount of time they're spending on actually administering the training in half, with automation of assignments, with HRIS integrations, with automated reminders, the manager insights and reminders, and just really easy to navigate and export reporting. So that's it for today from an Athena overview, but we'll turn it over to Philip for some Q&A.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. All right. It looks like we do have one question here. So the question is, what content is in the training? Do you have sexual harassment training? What's the length of that one? Why do employees finish it before the deadline? That's always a problem. So I can try and tackle this one. We have, I believe, 10 courses now. We do have harassment prevention. I won't rattle off the full list, but we do focus primarily in the area of required trainings. So things like, diversity, equity, inclusion, data protection, code of conduct. We cover kind of all of those different bases. Harassment prevention, the length of that one is a very interesting question. It really depends on state-by-state regulations. So it can be as short as around 42 minutes, depending on whether or not you're a manager and where you're located, and as long as 3 hours. So states like Illinois, they just released some regulation in Chicago where managers have to take 3 hours of mandatory training. The good news is that Athena manages all of that complexity for you. So you just pass us information about where your learners are located and whether or not they're a manager, and then we'll tackle assigning them the correct training automatically. In terms of the second part of the question, why do employees finish it before the deadline? That's always a problem. It's a good question. I think like what we try and do here in order to solve this programmatically is give the admins lots of flexibility to create a deadline that makes sense. So you can set it as short as something like 14 days and as long as something like, I believe 180 days is the max. And that I think really allows you to kind of tailor your communication to your team in terms of expectations about like when you want them to complete it, if you want them to do it all in one chunk, or if you want them to kind of spread it out over their workflow. So that's our attempt at kind of tackling that problem to ensure that you don't have folks that are getting behind on their day-to-day work because of compliance training. All right, second question here. So I am always hearing that our compliance trainings take too long to complete, especially from executives. Love to hear how we might be able to shorten the trainings, but still be compliant. Tess, do you want to tackle this one?
Sure. Yeah, this is a great one that I also hear about a lot, the fear of overtraining. So one, when we think about the actual content itself, oftentimes training's being assigned to people that don't need the training, right? So I hear often, for example, that a company might not have the resources to figure out the correct assignments on an ongoing basis for harassment prevention. And so it's too complicated if you have people in 30 states to always figure out for new hires, these people need New York manager, this California, And so the easiest way to solve that is like, okay, we're just going to give everyone California manager training and we're safe because it's the longest, it's the most quote unquote comprehensive. And actually that's not the right approach, right? People are getting training that they don't need to learn about. If they don't live in California, they don't need to learn about California law. And then if there's a law they do need to know because they live in Illinois, like they're not necessarily getting that, right? And so that's like one-way ticket to having people zone out and not pay attention if you're overtraining. So one is like, are you getting the right training to the right people based off of where they live, their manager status, their team that they're on? So making sure the assignments are correct is the first step there. And then secondly, finding a training provider that really just hits the highlights, right? It's like, here's the law you need to know. Here are the gray area situations that might be challenging to navigate. Here's a realistic scenario you might deal with or have dealt with that you see yourself in. And here's a quick check on learning, right? It's like, let's hit the key takeaways. And so that's our approach when it comes to training. We really put things into micro modules that are efficient. They cover what someone needs to know. They're memorable, but they don't go too far into legalese or in depth into things that employees don't need to know. And then you can think about stacking those micro topics for different teams as well. And think, okay, our sales team needs anti-bribery training, but our sales team in China, is going to need double the length because they're dealing with more complex issues. So having that flexibility of the training to really choose the right topics for the right individuals.
Thanks, Tess. All right, next question here. So how to stop chasing your management team to complete compliance training or any other project? So this is a tricky one. It can often be tough, I think, with some of the higher ups, like ensuring that they're bought into the training and doing it as well. Melanie, I'm kind of curious to hear your perspective here, if you wouldn't mind weighing in.
Yeah, I think where people can fall short sometimes is sort of explaining the why behind why we are doing a thing, why we are doing an initiative, and how this ultimately helps us, right? I think it's quite understandable if you have the sense that this compliance training is a complete waste of my time. This is only going to distract from me bringing in revenue to the company, from me being an effective manager. And yeah, I can pretty much empathize with why you would say, nope, I'm not going to prioritize this, and I'm not going to push my teams to prioritize this either, right? But if you take a step back and really explore the why, even for us on the admin side, where even we are saying compliance training is not the thing that I want to eat up my whole time, right? Even us, there's still buy-in, right? There's still a belief in the reality that harassment prevention training is important. DEI training is critical. Why? Because I promise you, there are people on your team who are struggling, who are maybe doing things in a way that is not inclusive and not conducive to the team culture that we want to build, and is actually taking away from our effectiveness and productivity, is actually taking away from our employee retention because they are doing things that aren't actually effective. And that's why it's so important when you pick a compliance training provider that you're picking a really good one with meaningful, effective trainings. I'm going to guess that at least a handful of you on this call have had the unfortunate experience of having your employees take your harassment prevention training only to walk away making more inappropriate jokes than they were making before the training because they didn't take the training seriously. The examples they gave were a joke. They were not relevant. You couldn't identify with someone. It doesn't identify the gray area issues. Like, for example, what do I do if I've accidentally misgendered someone? I don't know what to do, right? And if you have a compliance training that isn't actually meaningful or talking about things that resonate with your employees, that's exactly what's going to happen. But if you pick a training that actually speaks to your employees, that actually, like Athena, where our entire mission statement is building more inclusive and ethical workplaces, right? Then you can give a really solid why that you stand behind, which is this training is going to help us build more effective, inclusive, successful work cultures at this company. And it's really important that you as a manager stand by that. So I think it's really important if you're struggling to get completion, think about why that is. Why don't you have buy-in? And you can't just say, take it because you have to. That's not, you can, but that's not going to be particularly effective or get you any buy-in. But if you can really articulate a really thoughtful and meaningful why that feeds into the same things that your managers are already prioritizing, you'll have a much better chance of success. Okay, all. Well, it seems that is the last of the questions. So really want to thank everyone again for tuning in. Reminder that you can scan this QR code if you want to learn more about us. And also reminder that we are currently running a promotion where you can get your first few months of Athena free. So if you're interested in that, reach out to any one of us or use a QR code to sign up for a demo. And we can walk you through a little bit more about what Athena has to offer and how we could maybe be the compliance training company for you. All right, well, thank you again to everyone and to all our panelists.